Our next session is New Directions in Marketing and Customer Insight. And to present to you today, we have the fabulous Lori Carlin, who is the Director of Marketing at Delta Think, and she's also the Senior Consultant. So I give you Lori Carlin.
I'm in fear of the clicker, so Betsy's gonna, I will. I'll use that fabulous. Next slide. Thank you. Yes, she definitely set the stage. I feel much better, because I may have to go sit at some point, but. So I'm Lori Carlin from Delta Think, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. And just a little bit of background, I've been working in association management and scholarly publishing for over 20 years, somewhere over 20 years, I won't say how many. And I've worked for a lot of different organizations before coming to Delta Think, and have a lot of background in the industry. And like to talk to people and like to figure out what makes them tick. So I think that that is a downside for my 17-year-old son, but it has worked really well for me in terms of marketing. So I'm going to talk to you today about customer insight, and I'm going to touch on 4 areas. First, I'm going to talk about customer insight tools or toolkits and what's out there, what's available, just an overview of what you might want to consider in terms of customer insight tools that you might want to employ. And then I'll talk about analyzing some of the findings when you use these tools, how you can go in and dig in and what they will tell you, where they might be useful to you. Then we'll talk about moving those customer insights into market strategy so that you understand how you can take those insights and put them to use. How can you take them and then use them to implement programs and services and products, and then we'll wrap up. So we'll start with the toolkit, and we can. So customer insight really gives you a lot of different benefits. You really want to dig in and find out what your customers are interested in. You know, years ago, you might have your IT folks or your marketing folks or your customer service folks, your publishing folks sitting in a room and saying, I think they need this, and building this, and then hoping that they would come to you and utilize those services and products and benefits that you were putting out there. Customers are too savvy now. They know what they want, and it's our jobs to find out what it is that they want and uncover those insights. So those insights really are going to give you improved customer retention and loyalty. If they like what you're providing to them, they're going to stay with you. They're going to talk to their friends about it. It can identify new product ideas, find the gaps and the challenges that your customers are having, and help you to identify what you can do to make those frustrations easier for them. Create a sustainable competitive advantage, really make sure that you're out there in the forefront and that you're bringing forward something to your customers that differentiates you from everyone else out there. Can bring your products to market quicker if you know what your customers want and you can design with that in mind. Mitigate your risk, certainly, in terms of bringing new products and services to market or improving on the services and products you already have. And prioritize your investment dollars. If 5% of your community really wants something, but it's going to cost you $50,000 to implement, maybe that's not the right product or service or journal for you to be focusing on. Maybe it's more important to be looking at the larger group, and that's where you want to invest your, prioritize your investment dollars. So there are, we can bring this up. Yeah, there are many customer insight tools available to choose from. I'm not going to talk about all of these. You know, some of these are probably very familiar to folks: surveys, focus groups, competitive analysis. Some may be a little bit less familiar, building personas, analyst calls, conjoint analysis. Some may be very new, contextual inquiry, alpha beta test programs are certainly something usual. So all of these insight tactics or techniques are out there, and the question is, what do we use and when do we use them? And you can go to this was, yeah, a couple more. So you can see that there are a lot of ways to slice and dice these programs and services. You know, are you looking at a pricing strategy? Are you looking to launch a new journal? Are you looking to add features or benefits to a, can I take this? Yeah, that's better. Okay. Then I don't feel so tethered. Are you looking to launch a new journal, come up with a new content strategy, redesign a website? And what are the tools that would work best with that? Would you use personas in order to do a website redesign? Would you use contextual inquiry to do new product development? Where do these cross and how do they relate together? So we like to look at customer insight in terms of levels. And this is something at Delta Think that we use quite often when we're working on customer insight and market research projects. And level 1 is basically your wide analysis. It gives you broad and general information. Think of it in terms of survey or competitive analysis, where you're going to look at a broad group of people or a broad amount of information without a lot of depth. You're not necessarily going to be asking questions of people where you can interact with them. You're going to be gathering data for the most part. And those are things like competitive research, customer surveys, market sizing, where you fit in the marketplace, where do you fit in the universe. And then, sorry. And then level 2 gets you a little bit deeper. So level 2, you're interacting with your customers. You're talking with them. You're doing in-depth research in terms of interviews. You might be doing some focus groups. You might be doing user testing. But it gives you an opportunity for interaction with the customer. You get to ask them why. Whereas level 1, you're looking at behaviors and habits. In level 2, you're looking at the motivation behind those behaviors, the why of what they're doing. And then for level 3, that takes you even deeper into the customer insight process. And we like to look at things like contextual inquiry when we're talking about level 3. And that's really more of an observational type of technique where you're sitting and watching the customer to see what it is that they do and how the procedures and processes and products fit into their workflow. So you really understand what challenges they might face. And there are things that you're observing that they may not even know themselves, that they're not necessarily able to articulate. Maybe they've built workarounds, so it's become like white noise for them. They're not really, they don't understand themselves what the frustration is that they're facing. And they come in quantitative and qualitative varieties, all of those things that I talked about. But we like to think that they work hand in hand, that you're not using just one process to get to the root of your customer, that it's a combination of processes, and that qualitative and quantitative customer insight can work very well together for different purposes. So on the quantitative side, you'd be looking at things like website usage and social media analytics. You might be filling out your demographics about your customers, their actual behaviors and habits, as I mentioned before, what tools or systems they might be using. And then on the qualitative side, you're actually talking to the customers. You're interacting with them. You're having a give and take. You have an opportunity to ask follow-up questions. And your customers are not only your external customers, they are also your internal customers or internal stakeholders, your fellow staff members, folks who are on the front line and talking to customers every day, have a wealth of information to share if they're asked. This cartoon just sort of sums it up for me. So here, the survey found that many baby boomers now prefer meaningful experiences to new possessions. Yay! They don't want things. They want experiences because they ran out of storage space, not because it was some warming of the heart that they were over materialistic things. So that's why it's important to find out the why behind their responses. Okay, so analyzing the findings. So I'm going to go through now the 3 levels and give some examples and show some scenarios that I've worked with in the past. So surveys being one of the most obvious level 1 concepts. So it's not new, but very effective, especially when it's in combination with other things. And you can really get those broad insights across a wide swath of customers. It really can inform your deeper research, so it can tell you certain things about your customers that you now want to find out the why. What are those questions? What's that feedback that you got back from your customers that they search a certain way, or they use a certain journal, or they prefer a certain tool, and now you want to go to another level of research and find out why for those particular items. And it can really help validate on the other side, going in the other direction. You can have done some quantitative research. You could have done interviews, find out about a new product or a new service that you're thinking of implementing, a new journal that you're looking to launch in a new way, or a new feature for your journal. And now you want to look at a broader audience to see whether that's really going to resonate with a larger group. And then it can help you track trends over time. So surveys are something that are good to do on a regular basis, so you can see we've implemented these products, we've implemented these programs, we've done this marketing. Has it moved the needle at all? Where are we now as compared to where we were 2 years ago or so? I'm sorry, yeah. So you do want to define your clear research objectives and your user segments. And this is going to be across the board for all of the insights that I'm talking about today. Really important to understand where you're starting, to have those research objectives well defined. What are you trying to achieve? What are the questions that you are looking to answer? And then what is the audience that you are interested in? Are you interested in early career people? Are you interested in mid-level researchers? All right, without skipping a beat. So really important to have those research objectives or research goals, and to figure out who your audience segments are. Really, really key. Are you talking to early career folks? Are you looking to provide something to mid-level career academics? Are you looking to provide people who are in a professional capacity outside of the academic arena? A lot of us work on publications that are geared towards academics, but we don't want to forget about all the other practitioners out there. So really, really important to understand who you're targeting. And there are likely to be multiple groups within those audiences. Use branching within your surveys. You can start out asking questions and then branch out into, well, they do go to my meeting, they do read my journal, they don't read my journal, and start asking different questions there. Use filters on your responses. Don't just look at the data, but now start filtering it by those audiences, by different demographics. figure out what's important to you and use those filters, they can be really powerful. And again, repeat the surveys to see what your trends are like. So how should the surveys be used in real life? And this is an example. The objective here for this particular survey was to learn about content selections, access, collaboration, sharing, gaps, and values. And this is just one response in the survey results. And what we were looking at here was, the question was, for which of the following educational areas do you need support and resources? And this was the non-member reply, broken down by those who were aware of this particular journal and those who were not aware of this particular journal. And you can see that you can start to pick out things that we found that the non-members who were aware of the journal were the type of customer who really wanted support and resources in this particular field. But you can see where you would take responses here, and you can validate interview results. You may have been interviewing non-members and found out something about non-members and what they use in terms of support and resources. Or you could say, I want to dig deeper now into some of these, and you can now set up interviews or some other deeper research to go further. But you don't want to just take the data at face value. You want to do some analysis on it. And you also want to look at some of the comments that are made in your open responses, because they can be very informative as well. I just want to take a minute to mention NPS scores for anybody who is not familiar and is not using them. Very valuable question in your survey toolkit. One simple question on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this company's product or service to a friend or colleague? And it's a whole system. If you're interested in finding out more, there's a website where you can get more information, but it's something that you can ask on a yearly basis, a bi-yearly basis, get an answer, and see how it tracks year over year. So interviews are a good example of level 2. These provide, again, those insights into the why behind those behaviors. What's the motivation? It gives you an opportunity to have an interactive discussion. You can ask follow-up questions. We find during interviews that you are often off script, and we don't even really call it a script, it's a guide, because you want to let the person you're talking to speak, you want to hear what they have to say, and you want to just keep asking more and more questions as you go along. Have those research goals and those user segments set up, have that structured guide, because you want to be able to compare. If you're doing 20 interviews, you want to be able to go across all 20 and say, this is how they search. But again, you want to have a free-flowing conversation around that topic area. We talk about 4 interviews per audience segment. It doesn't sound like a lot, but you would be surprised to see that once you get to about 4, you start to hear the same things over and over again from the people you're interviewing. Don't ask yes or no questions. You will have people who don't respond and will just answer yes or no. Keep asking them why. I like to say, be a toddler when you're interviewing somebody. Just keep saying why until you get the answer you're looking for. So in terms of how the interviews should be used, this is a deeper dive into one of the interview projects that we were working on. So this one was to look again into info needs, access points, and discovery habits. And here you can see that the research goals were how do they search and discover content, with some underlying questions below that. And this was just one of the findings from that research goal. There were probably 10 or so that came out of discussions on that. But for this particular group, we found out that OA was really attractive because they don't have budgets for access. And sometimes they might have a subscription, but that the money will be restricted the next year. They just can't get to the content in other ways for this particular field. But we also found that they don't have grant money for APCs either. So it was a dilemma, but it was something this organization wanted to know about how the field felt about open access. You can also use it, flesh out personas, which are really a very effective tool to say, this is a type of customer that I either have or I want to have, and this is what they look like. And we like to give them names and faces and build a personality for them so they really become real to you, and you know who your customer is and who you're trying to connect with. And then this, we can also use them to map out audience journeys, which is really, where is your customer now? Where do you want them to be? And how are you going to get them there? And these are some of the questions that we ask when we build out audience journeys. So what's the action you want them to take? What must they believe in order to take that action? What do they currently believe, and what are the potential hurdles? And this is all information that you've gathered from your customer insight that allows you to answer these questions and to build out these journeys. Last, we've got a level 3, which is contextual inquiry. So this is really observational. This is where you take a 2-hour chunk of time and you go in and you sit with a customer in their natural habitat, and you watch them to see what it is they're doing. You want to make sure you're in their office, they're sitting at their computer where they normally do their work. And you ask them, when was the last time you looked up an article? What were you looking for? How did you search? They go to Google. Why did you pick that article? What made that appeal to you? Why did it resonate with you? What was important about it? So you really are taking that, you're taking observations and you're interpreting them. And the interesting thing about the observations is that sometimes they'll tell you that they do one thing, and then when they sit down at their computer to go through it with you, they do something else. They tell you, this is my favorite journal, and then they go to log in and they don't remember their password. You ask them if they ever go to this tab or that tab, and they'll say, no, I never do that. They go to the site, the first thing they do, go to that tab. And they're not lying. It's their perception. They're just not remembering exactly how they do things, and that's what makes the observation so powerful. So in terms of how we can use this, this is just a process I thought I'd put up here just to give you some information. Again, you know, we talk about the research goals and the user segments, performing those interviews. We then look at holding debriefing sessions, so everyone on the team talks about that interview and goes through the notes and goes over all the findings, everything that you talked about, and makes notes of every comment that was made that has a motivation that you can utilize. We generally put these on index cards or Post-it notes, something of that nature, that you can start. They're anonymous at this point, and you can start sorting them and grouping them together. And this is a picture of the process to build these, what we call affinity diagrams. So here's all the notes, and they start out in just an unorganized group. Maybe you've put them together, you've got some high-level ideas of what you want to do or what you want to know about, like search or mobile usage or how they keep current, and you walk around and you take these notes and you just put them together in these very broad groups. And then you start aggregating them by common themes. And you might put a larger question up at the top of what they're trying to achieve. And you just keep building this hierarchy until you've got this top level interpretation of what's going on here. And then in the final phase here, and by the way, this is generally being used in terms of looking for new product ideas and innovation. So the team walks around, and in these examples, we had teams walking around, we call it walking the walls, where you've put everything up on the wall and everybody walks around and starts reading the notes and coming up with ideas and brainstorming. And can give you a really good idea of some new ideas or new solutions to problems. So, lastly, how do we take all this information now and move it into a strategy that you can use? So you've got that customer insight research in hand, and so we generally have started in these processes with two items that we usually concentrate on in the beginning when I've worked on these projects. We'll start out with figuring out what are the differentiators. So once you've got this research, you've spoken to these customers, and you've started to hear the words or the concepts of things that are important to them, or they think of when they think of your products and services and journals. So what are those differentiators? What are those words that are going to resonate with them in your marketing material? Are you trusted? Are you an authority? Is this information immediately applicable? Is it practice changing? What are the words for you that have come out of that research? And then from there, we develop a positioning statement that really takes those words and puts it into your value proposition. And it's really a way to ground your organization. It's something that we take and we then say, okay, all of our marketing material is now going to be based on this positioning statement. It doesn't have to, you don't repeat it verbatim, you don't put it on your website, it's just everybody can speak with one voice. Marketing is writing some copy, they've got that statement. Your sales folks are writing some copy or talking to customers, they've got that statement. Your website folks are putting up information, they've got that statement. It's always resonating, and you know what the important things are for your journal, for your portfolio, your organization, what it is you want to bring forward. And then we generally work on building those audience journeys. So defining that audience again, exactly who it is that you're interested in contacting, what it is you want them, what they currently believe, what you want them to believe, and getting them from A to B, how you're going to get them there. And then we take that information and map out the plan. So here, just a simplified version. We're starting off with our audience segment. From there, we want to know what are our goals or our call to action. What is it that we want that audience to do or to believe? Our differentiators. What did we say were our attributes that make us special, and ones that will specifically resonate with that audience, what's important to them? So you might have, your early career folks career development might be the most important thing. They may want content within your journal that helps them grow professionally. So that's what's going to be a differentiator for them, and that might be different than another audience. And then delivery and distribution. How do they want to receive it? What have you learned from your research in terms of, do they like email? Do they like text? Do they like phone calls? Where are they? What channels are they on? Are they on ResearchGate or are they on LinkedIn? Where can you get to them? And here we have some CI findings for non-academics in early career, a little bit anonymized from a study that we had done. And what we found about these folks were that they follow a path suggested by their mentors, that their mentors are really important in their decisions of what publications to read and what websites to go to, that they prefer email for communication, they go straight to Google to search for career information, and LinkedIn is their preferred social media. So in terms of a marketing strategy for this group, one of the goals was to promote certification through the journal. And what we laid out here, based on these findings, were that we were going to look for people who were already certified, and they were going to become influencers or advocates of the program to their mentees. We were going to develop email promotional campaigns because they preferred email as a way of contact. We were going to look at Google AdWords because they were in Google searching for certification. So if we could come up with Google AdWords campaigns that really targeted the certification to that group, that might work effectively. And we were going to establish a LinkedIn group because that was their preferred social media platform. And lastly, but definitely not least, measure success. So really fundamental, often left to the end, really important to do. Establish a dashboard, make sure that you're checking on the different metrics associated with all of your work. Make sure that you're checking normal things, usual things like email opens, click-throughs, social media engagement levels, those link referrals. Are really important, and whatever impact you're having on your audience. It could be very simple, it could be a one-pager, look at it every month, see what's going on, tweak, change, rinse, repeat, and but make sure that you're tracking to see whether you are being successful. And I think that's pretty much it. The last slide is, yeah, just a little wrap up, and then we're done. Oh, that's okay. That's it.
Great, thank you, Lori. So I wanted to ask a few questions. I'll start the ball rolling a little bit. You were talking about surveys, and we know those of us in sales and marketing, really relish the importance of good quality surveys. But then I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on how, I talked to you a little bit about this morning, but what do you think about offering incentives for engagement? Offering people something in exchange for responding to the survey?
I think that's incentives are a really powerful tool. Again, you have to know your audience. What I have found is that if it's members of my organization who are really interested in helping me out, they don't necessarily need an incentive. They'll sign up for interviews, they'll answer surveys, but if you're looking to go to your non-engaged audience, to prospects, to people who may not know you, incentives are really a good way to go. In the survey end of things, you can just offer, not everyone who takes the survey would get an incentive. It would be some sort of, I'm trying to search the right word to use here, some sort of sign up, and then you might pick a couple of people that would maybe get a subscription or some sort of a gift card. Interviews, just to take that a step further, again, unless these are really invested people who want to help you, and some members do want to do that, and that can work. It's often, you often need to be giving them something, usually in the form of, we usually use gift cards, $100 a piece. When you're doing interviews, you're not doing a lot of interviews usually, anywhere from 12 to 20, so it's not a huge investment. And depending upon your audience and what their socioeconomic level is, the incentive can be significant for some audiences.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I've actually responded to surveys as a result of a gift card and so forth, and do find it as a good carrot. Nina, you were going to ask something?
I like focus groups. It depends on the situation. Sometimes what happens with focus groups is that the meek will not be as responsive as you'd like them to be, and they might even be influenced by the others in the room. That's why I think focus groups are great when you've got a product to show, when you want user feedback, when you want to test certain things. Focus groups are great. In terms of an interviewing tool to just get information, some people can overshadow others, and that's the problem sometimes with focus groups in that environment.
So I had another question I'm going to ask. In terms of the survey engagement, so you've talked about the incentives, what else can you share with us about ways to encourage engagement, such as the time of day that you send a survey, limiting the time of response, the number of questions, and those sorts of things, so that the nitty-gritty details of.
So I would say, first and foremost, that when you're conducting a survey, the normal rules of email apply, and you're normally sending out an email. So the normal rules of email apply. What's your subject line to get them to open up that email? Times of day can matter. And how long the survey is going to take, and telling them right up front how much time, an investment of time they're going to need. I've done surveys that were 20 minutes or so. That's a lot to ask someone. 10 minutes is a really great amount, but sometimes you've got a lot of questions to ask. And again, if you're asking members, they may be more likely to say, okay, I'll take 20 minutes. But if you tell them up front, that's really important. We always see drop-offs. We always track how many people logged in and then how many actually finished the survey. So that's important. I'm just trying to think of some of your other, I think the normal rules of email would apply there. And
what is the time of day that you suggest for sending a survey?
This is a little bit all over the place. People sometimes say, oh, Fridays, terrible day to send email. Not true. Not true. Friday mornings are actually a pretty good time. Weekends are not bad either. If you know your audience, you've got to see how your audience reacts to things. For some organizations, for some journals and publications, their folks are not on email during the workday. And so evening and weekends is a better time to send out things like this. And they may have more time, they may have more leisure time to sit there for 15 minutes and take a survey for you. So it does take a little bit of trial and error. There are certain, before a holiday weekend, I would not be sending out emails, and you need to look at those kinds of things, but it is trial and error. The one thing I will say about surveys is that we find that 3 times you have to send out the survey in order to get the results that you want. And somehow, magically, you're about 100 or 200 short of how many responses you wanted to get. You send out that 3rd blast and you get them. So generally about a week and a half to 2 weeks apart, 3 shots would be my recommendation.
I'm big on that, sending that email at 8:50 a.m.
Yeah,
those tend to get responded to very well, just so you know.
Yeah.
And then kind of shifting gears a little bit, and I'll try to leave time for general audience question and answer, but I'm really interested to know what you think about starting an advisory panel.
Okay, customer advisory
Thank you. Yeah.
boards. Yeah, so just worked on one recently, also very, very effective. 3 things that I can think of in terms of the customer advisory boards. I just worked on one that happened to be focused on nurses and nursing. And the first thing I would say is that for that particular market research effort, we identified our personas first, because it was really important to find out who we wanted to talk with, and then make sure that the demographics of our customer advisory board matched up to those personas. And in that particular instance, we had some floor nurses. We knew we wanted to have nurse practitioners. We wanted some early career. We wanted some mid-career. And we laid out the demographics for that board. So that's important. Then this goes into the focus group question too a little bit, I think. Talk to the people first when you're recruiting. Make sure that they're going to be engaged. You can talk to them for a little bit and get a feel of whether they're going to talk, whether they're going to add to the process. You could be wrong. This is not, it's more an art than it is a science, but you do want to have a conversation with them and see how engaged you can determine they might be. And then the third thing is, which goes back to the incentive question, you do need to pay your customer advisory boards. That has been my experience. You need to determine how long an engagement you're thinking this is going to be. Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 hours a month, 1 hour a week? And come up with some sort of a compensation plan for these folks. They are giving you their time, and it's of value to them. Their input is of value to you, and there should be a compensation associated with that.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you very much. That was the other part of my question. Wonderful, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? Melanie has her hand up. Do you have a question, or do you?
No, I have a question. So when it comes to doing customer interviews, does it matter who is doing the interviewing in terms of whether it be an independent third party, staff, volunteers, where are you going to get the best information?
That's a good question. I was about to say it matters in terms of how good an interviewer they are. Some people are just natural interviewers and some are not. Because as I said before, you have a guide, but it's not a script, and this is not a prescriptive, here's question 1, here's question 2, here's question 3. You want to make sure that the person who's doing the interviewing knows about the product, the journal, the industry, knows enough to ask those why follow-up questions to dig deeper into the information. I have definitely worked on projects where the interviewer was a staff member, and ones where the interviewer was an outside person. I think it might depend on what it is you're looking to find out. Certainly I've been on interviews where I've been the outside person, and I've heard things where I don't think people would have said that to me if I worked for the organization. So I might lean a little bit in that direction, but sometimes not. Sometimes people, they just want to be heard, and they're going to tell whoever's asking them what their opinions are. And more often than not, especially in our space, people are not shy with how they feel about things and their opinions.
Thanks. Hi, Christine Orr with Ringgold. I was just wondering, when you do these customer insight and engagement exercises, how often, or can you speak to the fact that folks are very surprised by some of the results, or do you find it clarified? Because we all like to think, oh, I know my customers, I know what they want, I know what they're going to say. But really, I'm just curious from your experience, how often are people completely taken aback, or does it more clarify and help to crystallize?
I think there's always something surprising. I really do. And sometimes there's more things surprising than others, depends on how well you know your customer in advance. Oftentimes it does clarify, but I think you always find out things that you didn't necessarily know before, and can put you on a different track. Not always, but I always feel like there's something new that you find out.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Anyone questions? Let's see, anyone? Well, Lori, that was wonderful. I appreciate your time. Great, thank you very much.
We're going to take a break now until 3:15. Refresh your beverages outside. I think there may be some cookies still out there. They haven't swept them away. And then we'll be back in here for roundtable discussions at 3:15. Thank you.